So you want to start a business? Well, it certainly sounds like fun, and people for an awful long time have been getting excited about that very concept. Just so happens, though, a year or two later, some of those people are going, oh, what have I done to myself? Well, today on this big business brief, we are going to take a look at starting your own business and the things you can do to make sure it gets set up on the right track. So stay with me today for this week's big business brief.
In a world that's changing faster than ever, clarity is your greatest advantage. This is the Big Business Brief, where we break down what's happening, what it means, and what you need to do next. The big signal, the big x-ray, the big playbook, and the big owner. This is the Big Business Brief with Steve Beaman.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of the Big Business Brief. This is a program that is created for you, members of the big movement, if you will. And I want to talk to you about that for just a second, too. This has been labeled, it was started as the Beaman Intelligence Group. But as many of you know, I don't like having my name on it. I used it for the B so we could have big. But we are now looking at possibly changing it to the Builders Intelligence Group. And the reason for that is I'm finishing a book on the new American dream. And if you look at the one thing that's consistent through the people who've created that dream, is that they're all builders. Many of you are too. In fact, I would argue that all of you in the solopreneur and entrepreneurial space are builders. You're looking to leave tomorrow better than it is today. And that is the hallmark of a builder. You might be building a church, a not-for-profit, a home for your family, whatever it might be. Your goal is to make tomorrow look better than it does today, so you're a builder. I have a new book coming out on that, which I'm anxious to share with everybody. It probably will be out within this summer. So this may be the last of the big business brief. We may be calling it the Builder's Business Brief. I don't know. I'd take your feedback on that. But last week, you may recall, we talked a lot about uncertainty in the markets. We talked about the Iranian situation, which I'm pleased to report this week seems to be resolved. We've talked for a long time that the Trump administration took a big bet when they started this, that they could get resolution to this and get gas prices down for all of us. Well, it does look like there's been resolution to this, at least in some part, and gas prices have begun to come down and reflect that. At the last time I checked, I think oil was trading at about $75 a barrel on the futures markets. That's down from well over $100 when this started. So we're very pleased about that and for what it will do for the independent business person. Again, that's not a political statement. It's a statement simply of, reality. We still deal with a lot of uncertainty. We're trying to resolve the tariff situations as we go. But getting gas prices down will lead to deflation in food prices and some of the core commodities that you and I need every day. So that can be nothing but good. So that does do a little bit. We'll see a improvement, I think, in the July DEFCON report when that comes out, which will certainly take into account optimism based on this, confidence based on this, and those lower gas prices. So we'll hope that it holds, and we certainly will be talking about it each week as we go. I think they're on a 60-day holding pattern after this week's gets signed. It would be interesting to see how the Iranians handle that in the next 60 days. One hopes they're not just playing games to draw this out to the midterms, but you never know. That has not been a regime that is likely to be honest with the West. We'll just have to see, again, how it goes. One of the things we talked about last week was focusing on externalities and letting the information world affect your day-to-day actions. Again, we used examples of people in finance who might react to the news. We talked about not being reactionary and talking about the fact that you cannot control most of what goes on in your life. You have to control only that which you can control and let go of the rest. It's not always easy. I know that firsthand. But we have to learn to do it as business people. We have to learn to execute on our business, our strategy, and our plans without consideration and impact from recent and very volatile news cycles. So that was a big theme of last week, and I did get a lot of commentary on it, which I'm very glad to see. So again, I want to thank you for being with me. And the control of the economy and all that leads me to this week's, because we want to talk about starting a business, and we want to talk about the environment for that. We want to talk about the pitfalls of it, the good of it, the bad of it, the ugly, of course. But in the big setup, which is this section, we're going to talk about what exists for your business. So let me move right off into our first section, the big setup. Now, the first thing I want to reiterate to you, and you've heard me say it before if you've coached with me, is when you start a business, it's not about opening a company to sell a product. If you're doing it for that reason, don't do it. Your business should exist because you've devised a way to solve a problem for some group of people. You might be making their life easier, faster, more productive, whatever it might be. You're solving a problem that they have. Henry Ford solved the transportation problem. Thomas Edison solved the lighting problem. All of these basic businesses of going back to that fundamental of what you sell, to whom do you sell it, what problem do you solve? In your startup, as you begin to look at forming your business and your business plan, those are three things you need to know. To whom are you selling it? What are you going to sell them? And how does it solve a problem for them? You've got to see the world where somebody within your proposed customer base has a problem. Somebody's frustrated. Somebody spends too much money on something. They're confused. They're angry about some part of it. You exist to remove pain from people. And that should be the driving force behind your business. You should have passion about the solution, but the solution should be helping someone solve a problem. If you can't identify it, work to do that before you go down any financial steps, because you have to resolve that. And in the setting up of your business, you've got to keep it clear in mind that the problem you solve is the nature of how your business will grow. You think about Amazon just as examples. They didn't invent books, of course. They invented convenience. They exploited it very, very well. If you look at Netflix, they didn't invent movies. They just invented an easier way to go home and do it. They solved simplicity. Those are legitimate, soft things. Simplicity, convenience, all of these. Very, very legitimate. So again, your question shouldn't be, what product do I sell? Your question should be, what problem do I solve? It's a big difference. And as you become a big operator, I hope you'll take that big question to heart. What problem do you solve? Let's remember as we do this that economic cycles come and go. The economies go good and they go bad. Your market sector segment will go good or bad. But the bigger problem you solve and the better you solve that problem will prevent your company from having those kinds of short-term problems. Again, coming through COVID, if you were a necessary product that solved a problem or service, you survived, you thrived. If you were unnecessary or didn't have it properly laid out, you didn't. And let me share with you personally, those of you who are getting to know me a little bit, I've had my ups and downs. I have certainly started companies because I could identify a problem and I targeted a solution to that audience. I've had other companies I've started where I just thought a product was cool. Not necessarily the recipe for success. I've had other products where I saw a need in the market, but I didn't know the market, and I hired people to run it, and that created its own set of problems. So as you're starting your business, ask yourself this: how well do you know the problem? How well do you know the buyers? How directly impactful are you going to be on building that? As you're setting up your foundational thoughts, those are all very, very critical. But once you've come from setting up your thoughts and figuring out this is the problem I solve, this is the group of people I sell that solution to, then you go into what we call the big playbook, or the big X-ray, and you start to look into the business that you're going to build. So let's go next into the big X-ray. Now, it's interesting looking at the big x-ray, and this is a look into your business. So oftentimes you have people saying, well, I don't have a business yet. What should I be looking at? My point with the big x-ray on a startup especially is that you need to begin a habit of looking at these numbers and metrics before you even have them. Set up your books before you start the business. Have your chart of accounts laid out. There are within the business things you need to do. You need to decide, are you going to be a sole proprietor, a partnership, a limited liability company, an S corporation, a C corporation? Each of those has different benefits. But these kinds of decisions, again, together with setting up your chart of accounts and your accounting systems, help you start out on the right trajectory. They're not difficult things to understand, but they're important things to understand. Because in the big x-ray, as you look down into the business, you want to have your corporate documents clean. You want to have your books clean. You want to have those core operations very, very nicely done within your new company. Now, there are a lot of ways to get that done inexpensively. And again, if you have questions, you can write me at steve@stevebeaman.com. That'll help get us that dialogue going that gets you the information you need. But you want to be careful before you start doing your websites, your logos, your business cards, your office spaces, before you spend anything on that operational stuff. You need to make sure that your planning and your thoughtfulness has gone into the business to make sure first that you can do it. I had a situation recently that a person was trying to start a nurse training company. And before they found out they couldn't do this with the state, they were running full guns. But then they found out that the state required registration and forward payments of things, and really a series of regulations that made it impossible for them to start the business like they thought. It doesn't mean they don't do it, but they had to shift their thinking on how they do it. You've got to make sure in your business that you've done your homework and done your due diligence to make sure that when you start your business, you're able to start right up without the kind of legislative backup that we so often see affecting small business. Ask yourself these couple of questions again as you begin your big x-ray of the business you want to start. Who exactly is your customer? If you watched a few times ago, we did one on your customer avatar. It's very important to know who your customer will be. What do they look like? What are their fears, uncertainties, and doubts? What are the things they need and they feel? How can you help them solve the problem? So define your customer very well and know what's keeping them awake at night. They're the people you're concerned about. It's not the product, it's them. Have you solved the problem for them adequately? What's costing them time, money, resources? And then once you've kind of looked at that and said, well, I know who I'm selling to and I know the problem I'm solving, do a real heartfelt question on this. Why should they choose you? What makes your solution to their problem unique? Is it better service? Is it a better product? Is it a new way to look at the problem? What is it that makes you superior to those others who would try to solve that problem for them? If you can't think of that before you do anything else, you're going to have a problem down the line. So before you even start the business, you better be answering the questions of who you're selling to and what that customer avatar is, what the product or solution that you're selling to them is, and how that differs from the others who want to sell solutions to them as well. I guarantee you, if there's a problem, others probably have thought about it too. Pretty rare that only we see a problem. Now, if you take Amazon as an example, what Jeff Bezos did is said, there's this new technology called the internet, and I want to play in that space, so I want to sell books on the internet. Well, that was a convenient sale. He just did it better than anybody else. He made it more convenient. Well, how do you do that? How does your product or service solve that problem in a way that no one else does? Only you know that. And I'm sure you'll have a good answer for that. Now, as you do that, and again, this is kind of in the big setup, but the X-ray and the playbook, the strategy kind of go hand in hand on startups, because you don't have a lot to do an x-ray on. But one of the things you want to think through are your proposed margins and how you're going to make money. I know people say, well, I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to do the right thing. Kudos. But money gives you staying power. If you want to stay in the game, you have to make revenues, right? And those revenues have to be big enough to generate profit. You can't, if your product costs you $1 to make and you're selling it for 90 cents, you're in real trouble. So you've got to look at the numbers going forward on what you expect revenues to be, direct expenses, in other words, the cost of production, and your overhead. Some businesses may not have a lot of direct costs. Consulting, for example. The problem with consulting is a lot of consultants give away their time for free. Well, that's a real cost. They need to put that into their costing structure. I mean, it doesn't maybe feel like it's a cost to them, but it is. And you've got to look at your business and say, what are the real costs of me providing that solution? Do it thoroughly, thoughtfully, and accurately, because you're making a big bet, because you're saying, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to take a risk, I'm going to upset my stable life for this solution sale, and here's how I think I'm going to make money on it. Kick that tire back and forth, sleep on it, do all those things to make sure that as you do that, you have a very high confidence level that the numbers you're putting down are ultimately going to be real. It's not easy, but it's a necessary step in putting the big x-ray to bed and making sure that you've got a handle on where you think your business will go. So, with that said, looking at the company that you're going to start, let's move into the big playbook, and that's where we take a look at your strategy. As we look each week, I try to give you tangible lists of things that you can do. So here in the big playbook, I'm going to give you 5 things that you should do and can do on your strategy to make your new business come to life. Number 1, know exactly who your customer is. Gee, I've said that before. One customer, one problem. Who is it and what's the problem you're solving? If you can come up with that solution set for that one customer, you can rinse and repeat. But you have to know, who is this customer, what problem do I solve, and how does this solution work for them? Number 2, sell before you perfect. And this is interesting. Oftentimes, and in finance, they call it paralysis by analysis, where you don't make a movement until you're certain that a move is right. In products, sometimes, and there's a fine line here, because it's sometimes too much to think, I want my product to be perfect before I sell it. Well, there's an awful lot of times when you need to get it out and get started. Take it out good, go to great. There, again, it's a fine line. If you're writing a book and that's your business, your first edition better be very close to perfect. But it doesn't have to be your full story and perfect everything. You can put out a book and then do a second edition that's cleaned up. It's entirely possible. You can do a product that works and solves the problem, but version 2 does it much better. That's very common. So don't just stagnate yourself by saying, I have to be perfect, because you've got to start bringing cash in the door. We talk a lot about cash is king. You got to get out and start selling that solution so that you get cash in the door. And that's number 3. Watch your cash. So number 1 is to know your customer. Number 2 is to not be stagnated by perfection. Number 3 is watch your cash. It's critically important. You have to know how much is in that bank account today and how much is going out over the next few weeks, especially if you have a long sales cycle. If it takes you 3 months to sell a candidate, where another business might take 5 minutes, but if it takes you a long time, cash retention is much more important for you. So know your sales cycle and how it relates to your cash position. So get those down. Your customer, get down the fact that you're number 3, watch your cash. Number 4, from the get-go, build your business in known, quantified systems. Random behaviors cannot be scaled. Systems can be scaled. So virtually everything you do, think of it as a system. So in finance, manufacturing, customer service, onboarding, and we're not good at that here. I'm not good at that. But I need to get it documented so I can say this is my current process and I need to make it better. It's very hard to manage what you can't measure. And your processes and procedures for how you sell, how you market, how you interact with customers, all of those things need to be documented. You ultimately are going to be managing this business as opposed to doing, and you'll never get there if you don't have processes that can be followed. When you go out to hire your first person, their job is to follow your process because you know it works. So process and document everything from the get-go. And the number 5 thing is keep learning. It's really hard when you're running 100 miles an hour and you're the one-arm paper hanger and you're trying to build your business to keep learning. But never stop. Never stop being inquisitive about your customers, about other products on the market, about other solutions that are approaching these problems. Spend time with yourself to learn, to be intellectually curious. As I said, we're talking about going to this whole builders idea within Big because builders have a constant learning mindset. Things change around you all the time. I mean, think about it. You watch technology change by the day. AI, it's changing now, tomorrow, the day after that. Just in the last months, I've seen massive increases in capability. So all of these things, the markets change, they go good, they go bad. Geopolitics changes every week. This is happening, this is happening. You have to understand all that. And so learning becomes a core competency of you as the business owner and the manager. And you have to see yourself in that light. Don't let the business control you. You control it, but you do it by managing your processes, and learning. Learn more and more and more each time. Builders never stop learning. And again, as I looked at that word as a description for what we do here, the people that I want to be members of this movement are builders. We're people who see the world differently than everybody else. We see opportunity to make tomorrow better than today. Well, as a builder, you are constantly learning because you know, and we all know that we're not smart enough to know everything. We have to be open to learning and getting new knowledge and new ideas. So the 5th thing that I urge you to do in your playbook and your planning process is allow time for learning. In the book that I'm writing it's called The New American Dream, Builders, The New American Dream, there's a bibliography in the back that has a reading list. And as I was putting it together, a lot of these books I've read, some of them a long time ago, so if I reread them, but some of them I haven't. They're kind of on my wish list. It's important for you as a builder to go out and learn more and more and more. Never shut off your ability to do that because your knowledge is going to drive that business forward. And again, as things change, you have to be aware of it. So 5 things. Know your customer. Don't search for perfection before you launch. Watch your cash. Build your processes. And then never stop learning. Those 5 things have got to be in order as you start your business, as you go through the build-up process and the growing process, have all that put together. So again, I go back to the book I wrote, Everything is Everything, because people said, what is the one thing that you should do? There isn't. There's 10 things you need to do. So do them all. But do them well. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. You'll get it done. But those 5 things in the planning process, critically think them through. So now when we come back, I want to do a quick shift into the big owner, and I want to look at the impact on the owner of this new enterprise, and that's you. Now, becoming the person that you want to be as opposed to the person you are can be a very easy thing. often it's a little more difficult than we think, because becoming the person that you imagine running this company has a lot of characteristics you may not currently have. Goes back to why learning is such a key and critical component to your new business. Constantly improving, constantly learning. Because as you go to now run your company and you've got the basic business operations or ideas down, you've got your planning getting done, as you have these things, it becomes a real challenge to make sure you're in alignment with your company. And you have to be. That company can't grow bigger than you. So as you look at yourself, starting this business, and this is an observation I've had over years and years of doing it, starting the business won't immediately change your finances, but it will immediately change you, because how you see yourself is about to change in a big way. When you take the leap to start your own business, whether you've left your job or you've done it as a side hustle, it's now big enough, or you're starting for whatever is driving you to it, all of a sudden when you sit on the top of that mountain and you say, okay, this is mine, it does change how we look at ourselves, especially if you're doing it right and you take it seriously. Now you're looking at the processes that you have, you're looking at the procedures to do things, saying, how can I improve those? You're the business leader. And as you do that, the emotional path we talk about so often will require you to have a positive attitude. I think it was 2 times ago we talked about that, but not the rah-rah, fluffed up, happy days are here again every day. No, we know there are problems, there are setbacks, but the positive attitude is one that says it can be done. It's not an attitude that says, oh, I have a problem, I'm throwing in the towel. You can't. You're the head of it. You got to just bear down and fix the problem. So as you do that, your attitude will determine your altitude. And I hate the cliche, but it's so ultimately true. Keep that attitude going and realize that this business, this enterprise, this dream, whatever you call it, is going to challenge you in ways you've maybe not been challenged before. Patience, leadership, and we've talked about that. For example, always complain up, never complain down. Now, somebody is sitting there right now looking at it and say, wait a minute, if I'm the CEO, if I'm the founder of this and I'm the top, who do I complain to? Your spouse, a coaching group, not your employees, not your subordinates. Always complain up, never down. But discipline, decision-making, it's a lot harder than you think to know the right thing to do and do it. One of the reasons coaching groups have evolved is because business leaders frequently know the right thing to do, but doing that right thing is emotionally hard, so they don't. It's a good example is firing somebody. You may know this person should be let go. They haven't done their job. They're a toxic influence on the business, whatever it may be. But pulling the trigger on that shouldn't be easy, and it's not. There are very few times that you'll feel good about firing somebody. Now, I will tell you on that, just a side note, what I found in my life is by the time I ultimately fire a person, they already knew it. They were looking for another job anyway. You don't take it lightly because you're dealing with people's lives, but you have to make a decision on it and live with that decision. And so sometimes that discipline and decision-making can be extremely, extremely difficult. You have to have a level of confidence in yourself, in your own abilities, in your business's solutions. That's easier said than done as well, because you're going to have 1,000 things coming at you saying, don't be confident, you can't do this. Well, you can. You're the one who came up with the idea on how to solve the problem. You're the one who's created the processes and practices to get it off the ground. You can do it. But with that comes humility. Don't have the arrogance of saying, I did this, I created it, and I'm the only one who knows how it works. No, if you're running it like that, you're not running it right. The humility is to say, I built it, I know what I'm doing, but others can make me better. And they can make this business better. And ultimately, I saw a podcast by Gary Rabine, who is a very, very seasoned executive here in Chicago. I have a lot of respect for Gary. He built an asphalt company. But he was saying today that he sees people all the time who are the entrepreneur who build their company to 50, 100 million, but they're not the right person to take it from that up to the next level. That level of humility to say, well, it's past where I am. I need to hire somebody. That's legitimate. And you need to be humble enough to understand that. Because as you go through this process, I assure you, every weakness you've ever had is going to be exposed one way or the other, through a customer problem, a production problem, a supply chain problem, a finance problem. You're going to be hit with a myriad of these things that will challenge you to the core. But at the end of the day, all I can tell you is at the end of the day, it's a wonderful thing, because every one of those challenges gives you a chance to grow. And as a builder, we want to grow. We want to be better tomorrow than we are today. So take those challenges as learning experiences. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time doing this. I've talked to you guys before. I've spent 40 years in this game. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. There's no way to predict it ever. If you're going to do it a lot, you're going to have some winners and losers. The impact on your confidence and your humility is very, very real. Well, you've got to be able to keep it all together on the emotional path, the physical path, the intellectual path, and indeed, I like to talk about the spiritual path, because without that foundation, I never would have survived it. So as you go through the development now of this beautiful new business, and you get the decisions made as to whether you'll be an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC, whatever that might be, and you get ideas down on who your accounting will be with, who's going to maintain your chart of accounts, all of those fundamentals, move into your planning and realize the importance of your customer avatar, all these things. When it all comes down to you, make sure you take care of you. Because without you, the business will flounder and die. So you keep it up. You keep the attitude right. You keep your strength and energy up, and you make you the best you can be. That's the builder. That's what's created the American dream. That's why I wrote this book. I believe in the American dream. And when people ask me how I define it, I say it's the opportunity of a builder to build their own life. It's not about money. It's not about material wealth or material things. It's about the builder in us that says, I can make tomorrow better than today, for me, for my family, for my friends, for the society as a whole. That's the builder attitude, and that's what you've got to have as you go through this wonderment of starting your own business. I urge you, take our exams, especially the 5 Paths exams up on BeamanIntelligence.com. Learn a little bit about yourself, learn where your weaknesses are and your strengths are. Take the playbook or the big clarity exam and take the x-ray. And let's kind of go through your business and let you have new ways to look at it and think about it. Because ultimately, you're the one that's in charge and you're the one who has to run it. And you've got to run all those metrics as if they're, on the back of your hand. So I think you, as a builder who's doing this, can learn from people like me who've been there and done it. I urge you, write me at steve@stevebeaman.com. Get access to somebody through SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. They've got great mentors there who can come in at no cost and help you through this process as well. And what you're going to find, again, as you go through this is builders, and I will refer to you as a builder more than anything else, but you're developed. You're not usually inherently made. You're developed because you practice what you preach, and you practice daily making things better, more strategy, more process, more defined goals and objectives. You become a stronger, better manager as you go through. And don't wait until you know everything, because you never will. People have often said, let's wait until the time is right to start this business. If you have the right problem being solved, the right time to start the business is when you can solve the problem. Not an economic externality, not something. If you can solve the problem, that's a pretty good time to start the business. That should be your driving northern light. So keep going, because you and I, as the American builders, need to develop these companies. We need to build them as big as we can for the benefit of our communities, our families, and everybody else. It's all good, and we all win when the builders come out of the woodwork and into operations. So let's keep builders coming out and keep people like you starting businesses coming out more than ever, especially as we enter the digital age. So as always, thanks for joining me for this week's Business Brief. Next week, I'm going to start, continue building off this. Probably I'll talk about your first customers and how to create consistent sales. Starting a business is just the first step, right? You've got to start onboarding first customers. You got to make that right. And then we'll talk about how to scale it and operationalize it from there. But until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building. This is the American dream that you and I have, and let's make sure we use it for the good for all concerned. God bless. I'll see you in a week.